off on a tangent for a second. When I messaged you a bunch of years ago, I was doing some research on Sephardic Jews who ended up in Eastern Europe, and you had mentioned that your own family has such a tradition. Is that true?
Sure. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Astonishingly, actually, on both sides of my family.
Really?
My name, of course, is Sarna, and that's pure Polish, but there is a very strong family tradition, and backed up actually now through the DNA test, that the family had roots in Spain. The tradition of the family is that it goes back to no less than Don Yitzhak Abravanel, one of the great figures of Spain, who of course traced himself back to King David. I couldn't prove how that happened, but we know that there were Sephardic Jews who made their way to the centers in Poland after the expulsion. And actually, on my mother's side is another example of that. My mother was a Horowitz, a very famous a Jewish family, going back to Rabbi Yeshaya Horowitz. The name Horowitz, of course, is simply the town, Horavici or something, where they settled. But that was not the original name at all. And there we have good records of how they crossed from the Sephardic world into the Ashkenazic world, although keeping the tradition that they had originated in Spain and were Leviim and so on. I think the name was Halevi, and then moved over. So in other words, the big theme is that although we teach that Ashkenazim and Sephardim, they were totally separate worlds, and it developed in certain different traditions, but there was a lot of crossover and intermixing. It was still one Jewish world. There were people who visited back and forth, and there were Sephardic Jews who ended up in the Ashkenazic world, and vice versa. So it's a much more complicated a Jewish history that reflects on the vast migrations, really, of the Jewish people. And I'm sure that those migrations also brought learning and innovation in both directions. So it's a very important subject. And it's wonderful now that we are seeing more and more work on the Sephardic world. There is a whole group of very significant scholars, Sirah Rabbi Stein and others, who are approaching this material now, and that will rewrite aspects of Jewish history.
It's interesting that you say talk about intermixing